Hello, welcome to Modern Medieval, the podcast, and hopefully welcome back.
Yes, hopefully welcome back. I'm Megan.
I'm Ello.
This week we're going to kind of continue our, holiday season conversation about some not necessarily, Eurocentric holidays. So we have Hanukkah, which today is the fourth day of Hanukkah, halfway through. Happy Hanukkah. Diwali, and then a few of the Islamic holidays that are also in this autumnal winter season.
Yeah.
Just to kind of, be a bit more diverse, spice things up.
Yeah.
I will be very honest in the beginning that a lot of my knowledge on these is limited.
Yeah, mine too. So if you're listening to this and you know much more than us, which is very possible, please let us know. Please, if you wanted to come and talk about how you celebrate X, Y, and Z celebration, we'd be keen to have you. As always, it's not just for the two of us to come and talk. So whatever you want.
And also just that we are going to do the best with the limited knowledge we have. Yeah. If we forget something, if we get something wrong, it's no offense intended, literally.
Yeah, literally.
So we did do the research, but again, that's a limited capacity in regards to us both working. This is new knowledge, fucking 2020 holidays, everything on top of that, So I guess the best place for us to start is with Hanukkah, I would think, since we're in Hanukkah at the moment. So for me, growing up, I actually had some family friends who were Jewish through my mom. So from the age of 5 to 9, I actually celebrated Jewish holidays.
Really?
Passover. Yeah. Cool. I really embraced it. They gave me my own menorah, which is with my mom at the moment. I've asked her to send it to me numerous times and she just hasn't. But it's a brass tree, and then each branch is a different candle holder. And so when it's I'm second grade, I identified myself as Episcopalian Jew. It's not possible, but that was what I told people. I haven't been
oh yeah, how cool.
I was so proud of the fact that I had an Episcopal priest as my grandfather, and then I celebrated these Jewish holidays.
Yeah, the priest as a grandfather? What? I did not know
that. He's retired now, but my mom's dad was a priest for 40 odd years. But he got his calling when he was training for the Marines.
Oh,
so he did base camp for the Marines and then had an epiphany or whatever. And so he went to Harvard Seminary and got his degree there. And he was also a history teacher and a principal at schools, and he was a football coach, led a lot of teams Texas to championships. He has a this house. So growing up, I until they moved to Wyoming in 2001 when I was 6, would go to church to his services on Sunday mornings, did Sunday school. And then in the summers when I'd visit, because he was priest at the parish, I was an acolyte, so I lit the candles and got to wear the robes and the crosses, ring the bells. Going to church is much more fun when you're actually involved in the service than sitting.
Yeah. Also, because you have a better, it is kind of like a rhythm, right? You have to kind of get into the rhythm before you can figure out where you want to go with it.
Right, and you're just an active participant, so it's
very interesting.
So I had that. Religion's always kind of been there, regardless if I practice it or not. But so anyways, with Judaism and everything, Hanukkah, used to kind of celebrate it, and I do my best to be aware of it and think of it. This year I did drop the ball just because what is time and what are dates and what is life, honestly. Yeah. But the story of Hanukkah, a lot of people kind of know the gist of it, but it occurred before the Common Era. So this is before Jesus, because year 0 in the Roman calendar is Jesus.
All centered around that.
Right. And so this is a time of, conflict between Israel and the Jews and the Roman Empire with Antiochus III, who is also the king of Syria. So we have all kinds of troubles and issues that are going on. So lots and lots of tension. Hanukkah is the Jewish festival of lights. If you've ever listened to the Adam Sandler song, 8 days of Hanukkah. And it's a Jewish festival commemorating the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem at the time of the Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Empire. Whenever I hear the word Maccabees, I instantly think of Ross as the holiday armadillo and Friends, and he's like, and the Maccabees! Anyways, so Hanukkah is 8 days and 8 nights. There's actually like 2 ways that you can light the candles. There's the common way currently, which is add a candle each night so the light expands. And then you could do the inverse of that, which is you start with 8 candles and go down.
Go down, yeah.
This is because in the Talmud, there were 2 academies of learning, Hillel and Shammai.
Mm-hmm.
And so the house of Hillel taught that every night you add a candle, as we do today. Whereas the house of Shammai does the inverse. We currently are still in the house of Hillel moment. Tradition, or Jewish tradition, tells us that when Mashiach comes, we will follow the rulings of the house of Shammai. But until then, we follow the Hillel model, which I just thought was really, I didn't know that until my research. So I found that quite compelling. You know, Hanukkah's 8 nights because there was not enough oil for the candles to burn in the temple, but they used like the last bit, and it lasted for 8 nights. It's, you know, a miracle. It's an overcoming of oppression attempted in adverse. Exactly. Yeah, 8 days. And then it just, to honor that each year at the same time in the calendar, you light the menorah.
It's quite interesting as well, because obviously, like, if you think about the symbolism of lighting all the candles at once and the other way around, you have the same effect in the end, but it is perpetrated in a different way. And so, you know, it kind of goes back to like the literalness of these religious texts of like, and then there will be light or things like that.
Right. And like in that, with like the expansion of the light, right, and letting there be light, there is a lot of symbolism with each kind of number each day. So, and in Judaism, I mean, it kind of gets pulled out of proportion, you know, of like Kabbalahs and, you know, mystic numbers and conspiracy theories. Umberto Eco like establishes all his books about that. But there is in the Jewish faith, like numbers do carry significance. Just like in Christianity, you know, 3, Holy Trinity, whatnot. But like, for example, 7 represents all that is found within this world. There are 7 days of the week, 7 classical planets, and 7 musical notes. In fact, the world itself was created in 7 days. Yeah. Like when you have the 7 candles, it's a very powerful moment. And in the Jewish faith, 8 is the number of miracles, which is interesting too, because, you know, if you turn an 8 sideways, at least the Arabic number 8, it becomes an infinity symbol.
Yeah, I knew that. You know when you're so disconnected from numbers and maths that you're like, where are you going to go with that? Where are you going to go with that? You're like, oh, I know that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Did you know, Elo, that Hanukkah is the only Jewish holiday not mentioned in the 24 books of the Bible?
What?
Yeah, it's the silent holiday. So according to Shabbat.org, which is where I got a lot of my Jewish information, because I thought that a Jewish organization is a better place to go to than
completely
or something.
I mean, it's not that counterintuitive. I understand. I think it's completely logical.
Right. So I have 13 facts, and this is one of them. So it says that that's because the canon was sealed by the men of the Great Assembly who flourished 2 centuries before the Hanukkah miracle. Nor does it have a tractate in the Talmud that discusses its observances, it being Hanukkah. Instead, Hanukkah gets a by the way mention in the tractate Shabbat. In the context of discussing Shabbat candles, the Hanukkah candles, and by extension, the Hanukkah holiday, get their name in the Talmudic Sun. So I just thought that was interesting.
That's quite cool.
Or that, like, before there were potatoes, because that's something that is from Central and South America. So that didn't happen until, you know, the 1400s.
Yeah.
They used cheese because cheese has been around. Yeah, to eat cheese pancakes on Hanukkah, which is reminiscent of the dairy and intoxicating meal that the brave Judith fed the Greek general before she decapitated him in his sleep, saving her village. Apparently, cheese latkes morphed into potato latkes, and a new custom was born. Didn't know that either until looking at these interesting facts. Yeah. Because I feel like that's such a quintessential thing, is like having a potato latke with like the sour cream and or the like applesauce on them.
Yeah. So it's actually really interesting. The only memory I have of any kind of like Hanukkah related celebrations was when I was very little.
Mm-hmm.
My mum was friends with like an Israeli family.
Mm-hmm.
And one time they invited us to Hanukkah, and I remember, the candles, but I admit I don't remember anything else. I was like 5, but it's interesting how like what like, the symbolism that you kind of associate with it, rather than like all of the traditions around it.
Right. I'm trying to think of like an example. I mean, I guess the closest I can think of would be like, a Christmas Eve mass, or maybe like lighting a pumpkin on Halloween. But like Hanukkah is such a spiritual, even if you're not of the faith, like there's just such a tangible,
it's powerful. Yeah,
because it's like silent, and you say the prayers and you light the candle, and it is really beautiful.
No, it's true. And it's really interesting because obviously like this would be an interesting episode. Actually, we could get like lots of different Jewish communities around the world and see how obviously our holidays kind of adapt. And so it'd be interesting to see what kind of celebrations exist where in relation to it,
Yeah. And I guess it's also just always Christian and Catholic communities, I feel like sometimes forget that the first half of the Bible, the Old Testament, is literally the 6 books, I believe, of the Jewish, the Torah. It's
so stupid. Insane. I mean, it's all these things are so like intrinsically separated.
And I guess just one final thing about Hanukkah, because I kind of butchered the history a little bit. So there's a question in this, Shabbat.org facts, and it says Syrians, Greeks, Hellenists, or Yevanim. And so it goes, we sometimes hear of Greeks, Syrians, or even Hellenists in the Hanukkah story. So who exactly were the interlopers who were expelled by the Maccabees? And then the answer is all of the above. After the death of Alexander the Great, his empire was broken up. The Seleucid Greek Empire was based in Syria. The Ptolemaic Empire had its base in Alexandria, Egypt. And the soldiers stationed in Judea belonged to the Syrian Greeks. And then the Hellenists, Yevanim, who are them? The very same people. Hella is the Greek word for Greece, like Hellenic. And Yavan is how we say it in Hebrew. And then, of course, there were also Hellenized Jews, or Mityavnim in Hebrew, who sided with the Greeks /Yevanim /Hellenists /Syrians /Seleucids and posed an even greater threat to the survival of traditional Jewish life. I just wanted to say that because we always talk about how things are confusing and overlap, and there's different names from different places about the same thing. And this is a great example of that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, Hanukkah. Shabbat Shalom with that, and I hope that
happy celebrating. Yeah,
I hope the next, 4 days of the Hanukkah celebration are full of light, because here, at least in Manchester, it is
it's so dark
and rainy and dreary.
Oh my God, it's so dark today in London. It's insanely, oh God, I.
So yeah, I would imagine that, lighting the menorah once it's officially quote unquote dark out. It's very peaceful and nice.
Yeah.
So I guess continuing the theme of light would be Diwali.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a very logical next step.
Have you ever gone to a Diwali celebration?
No.
I think there were a few in Oxford, so I think I have gone to one, but I don't remember very much about it. Very colourful though.
Yeah, I've been around them and I've, seen celebrations, but I've never actually attended a Diwali celebration. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, Diwali is a festival of lights and one of the major festivals celebrated by Hindus, Jains, and Sikhs. It usually lasts around 5 days and is celebrated during the Hindu lunisolar month Kartika, which is between mid-October and mid-November.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most popular festivals, full of color, light, laughter, and it symbolizes the spiritual victory of light over darkness, good over evil, and knowledge over ignorance. It's generally or widely associated with Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, with many other regional traditions connecting the holiday to Sita and Rama, Vishnu, Krishna, Yama, Yami, Durga, Kali, Anuman, Ganesha, Kubera, Dhanvantari, or Vishkavakarman. So, I mean, there's so many different deities in Hinduism. That seemed like a large list, but
yeah,
they have hundreds. Which is really, the way that they're related is honestly so fascinating. When I had to study just like the core group in my anthropology course, it was fascinating and confusing simultaneously. There's a lead up to Diwali where celebrants prepare by cleaning, renovating, and decorating their homes and workplaces with diyas, or oil lamps, and rangolis, which is an art form originating in the Indian subcontinent, in which patterns are created on the floor or the ground using materials like colored rice, colored sand, powder, or flower petals. So I think a lot of people kind of associate this type of art with the Tibetan monk mandalas that are made out of the grain of sand.
Oh, I've got a funny story about this. I've got mandala tattoo on my thigh. And obviously I know that obviously mandalas are meant to, like, you know, they're supposed to be ephemeral. They're not supposed to stay designed. And so James's sister was like, but doesn't she know that, like, they're not supposed to last? She's like, yeah, too.
I mean, you could just say you'll die eventually and it'll fade away, but...
Oh my God. I mean, to be fair, Liv is one of our listeners, so she'll probably be like, lol.
I guess as long as you're aware of it and not like somebody that gets, you know, a word, you know, when they get something tattooed in like Japanese or Chinese and you don't know what the word says and then you get like soy sauce tattooed on your ass or something. At least you're not in that camp.
No. Although I think that's really funny that people do that.
They think it says peace and then it's just like soy sauce. But back to Diwali. So it's all right. So as well as like cleaning the house and, you know, like cleansing, people wear their finest clothes, illuminate the interior and exterior of their home with these lights or oil lamps and these mandalas or art forms, and perform worship ceremonies of Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity and wealth. They also light fireworks and partake in family feasts where there are certain sweets or mithai and gifts are shared. I mean, this does sound in a way very Christian, if you will, or Hanukkah, like gift giving, lights, laughter, community, a sense of kind of like harmony being together. So yeah, it's just a really bright, fun, beautiful holiday. This year it happened from the 12th to the 16th of November, so about a month ago. Diwali or Diwali, there's two different ways you could say it, comes from the Sanskrit Deepavali, meaning row or series of lights. So its name like literally means light. Yep. I love it when words are literally what they mean rather than, though also I guess the inverse is true. When you look at a word and you're like, how did this go from like meaning ox cart to like hardworking, beautiful something, or I don't know. I love it. The word journeys are always really interesting to me.
I agree. It's quite a fascinating, etymology is like really interesting.
Yeah. To kind of connect us to last week, I mean, we mentioned Diwali, but, you know, we were talking about pagan harvest festivals and times. So Diwali is observed every year in early autumn after the conclusion of the summer harvest and coincides with the new moon, Amavasya, and is deemed the darkest night of the Hindu lunisolar calendar. So this relationship to the harvest, the earth, the solar system, these very organic, biological, like, I don't want to say primal, but like very, very core basic experiences, again, inform this very complex religious practice. So I think that is very cool. Yeah. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on Diwali.
I mean, the one thought I have is the fact that this year families weren't able to reunite to celebrate lockdown. in the UK at least. So I kind of wonder, you know, obviously all families adapt to the situation that specific year, but I wonder how that was translated, what kind of celebrations were kept and how the rest was adapted, or whether it's been families' minds postponed. It's not like really in relation to like the celebration itself, but
right. Yeah, I mean, at least for myself, so I live in a very diverse neighborhood that is like very mixed. I live near an Islamic temple. I live near a Hindu temple. I live near Church of England church. So I have like a very large mix. And during the 5 days of Diwali, there were a lot of like fireworks and lights going off in my neighborhood outside.
Wow, okay.
But that being said, I do not know in regards to like the feasts or families coming together how that was celebrated. But I do know that it felt like, at least for me, that there was not a step back in the like outdoor light celebration. But then again, I haven't lived in this neighborhood with this holiday before in non-lockdown, so maybe it was like super scaled back.
Be interesting to know what it's like next year.
Because it took me like a click. I was like, why are there so many fireworks? Like, why is there so much light and like stuff? And then I went, oh, it's Diwali. And like, I knew it was Diwali, but it didn't like register, because areas I've lived in previously, there weren't enough people around for me to like that were celebrating that I realized.
Yeah,
because
it's true.
Like, I feel like in Berkeley, I would have had to have gone to like a particular location, whereas here it's just like,
well, Manchester's quite like a diverse place, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very diverse. It's one of the things that I really appreciate about, because even though it's, you know, smaller than London or other places, I do feel the diversity just out and about much more. Maybe it's the area that I'm living in, but yeah, it's a breath of fresh air. Like,
yeah, that's good.
Just completely.
And it's interesting because obviously everyone thinks that like London's really diverse, but actually in the end, quite gentrified.
Yeah, I feel like in London you really have to go to like like specific designated areas, and Manchester for sure does have that, but it feels like the areas and neighborhoods bleed into one another more than London. Though I do know that Manchester in the past like 10, 15 years has gone through massive gentrification as well. Anyways,
sorry.
No, but yeah, Diwali, if you don't know much about it, I highly recommend like looking at YouTube videos and photos. I mean, it is a really magical holiday. And there is the episode of The Office where they celebrate Diwali. And
really?
Michael, Steve Carell's character, takes Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song and then recreates it about Diwali. And he's like, have a happy, 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 happy Diwali. So, yes. It's a good show if you haven't watched it. American Office or US Office, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I've heard that the US Office is funnier than the UK Office.
Oh, it's so much funnier. You have to push through season 1. Season 1 is uncomfortable and not the funniest. It has moments, but it's because they didn't really know how to use Steve Carell's humor. So he's much more like Ricky Gervais, kind of cringy and cruel. And then starting in season 2, they like completely kind of rewrite him and make him much more of like a kind and ignorant buffoon that is unintentionally horrible but has a heart of gold.
Yeah.
Cool. It's very good. Highly recommend. And then in regard to Islamic holidays, I don't know, Elo, if you had any particular ones. There are 3 kind of in this time.
Really?
The months. Yes.
Because I mean, I know that obviously like Eid and Ramadan kind of fall different times every year. And so obviously like those are really big celebrations and they have a huge historic and religious connotation, and then traditions and, you know, what to eat when you're fasting and theory versus practice and the different types of the different ways of respecting that rule. And it's very spiritual and a kind of in a way like the physical alteration of your body in a way that like links it to your spiritual side.
Mm-hmm.
So those are very interesting, and they've both fall, like, depending on the year, they fall in different moments. So sometimes that they end up being in winter, which probably is quite nice if you're like a Muslim in Europe, because it means that the days are shorter, so you don't have to fast for as long.
Yeah, which
must be quite nice compared to like the summer Ramadan.
Yeah, like if you're in Australia or something like that, the days are long.
Yeah.
And hot.
Yeah. And then obviously Eid is celebrated in different times, also depending on the lunar, I think it's the lunar, or depending on the calendar at least.
Yeah, it's lunar.
And that has like a whole other series of celebrations and historical and religious connotations and stuff like that, but I don't know of any specific ones. So
yeah, the Islamic calendar is based on the synodic period of the moon's revolution around Earth. So lunar. And it alternates months of 29 and 30 days, which begin with a new moon. So generally like how our calendar is, but it's not as strict because it does fluctuate.
Yeah.
And 12 of these months make up an Islamic year, which is 11 days shorter than the Gregorian calendar, which is the like quote unquote everyday calendar that is like in your phones. I'm looking at like the dates on the Wikipedia Islamic holiday because it goes from 2019 to 2024 and it has like their main holidays and then the dates each year.
Yeah.
So they do move around, but they're all kind of generally within the same 3 months usually. Okay. So for example, this year we, on the 8th of October of 2020, we had Arba'in, and this is a religious observance that occurs 40 days after the day of Ashura. It commemorates the martyrdom of Husayn ibn Ali, the grandson of Muhammad, who was martyred on the 10th day of the month of Muharram. Like I said, it was the 8th this year. Last year it was on the 19th of October. Next year it'll be on the 27th of September, then the 17th of September, and then the 6th of September 2023. So due to the calendars, it'll be going earlier into September. But October, I mean, that's like fall, a kind of swing period. And then following that, the next holiday, according to this, is Eid, or Eid-e-Shuya, and also Eid-e-Zara. There's two different names, but the same thing. And it's a ritual festival observed by most Twelver Shia Muslims and some groups of Sufis, which those are the two dominant schools. It marks the end of the 2-month mourning period as a Dari after the events of the Karbala massacre, which occurred in 680 AD. It is generally celebrated on the 9th day of the month of Rabi al-Awwal in the Islamic Hijri calendar. Eid is often translated as festivity, while the term Shuya means brave or courageous. So therefore, Eid-e-Shuya stands for the Eid or festivity of the brave and courageous companions of Imam Hussein ibn Ali. So it's a festival of like courageousness.
Yeah.
Which I didn't necessarily know.
Think about,
I mean, in my education, we learned about Ramadan because in 3rd grade, because my teacher celebrated it. So we had this coloring book and it told us the story.
And how was that like with the with the parents and stuff? Was that
wasn't an issue, no, that I'm aware of. And then a little bit in high school, but since I went to a Roman Catholic high school and world religions, it was kind of just a hodgepodge of, because you try to learn a little bit of everything. And then also I was a sophomore in high school, so I just didn't give a shit. Because you're a 15-year-old asshole. That's just, I feel like, a general consensus of everybody. Sorry if you're like, I was not a 15-year-old asshole.
Well, lucky you. So many of us were.
Didn't feel like it at the time. Then you look back and you're like, no, that's the truth. That's the truth. I'm mature enough to say it. Nobody's perfect. Cue Hannah Montana.
Oh dear, that we could have done without that.
Sorry. So yeah, these kind of details, I heard of the holiday. I know because of social media and people around me that it's occurring, but didn't know what it was about, which is just kind of shitty society. we should care more and share more about people's cultural practices, I think.
Well, also, if you think about it, like, a lot of the things that we know are known because of ads and like the way that our culture kind of works.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of a shame that that stuff's not extended to other communities, like popular culture. Oh well, there's so many things that are wrong with our society.
Yeah, baby steps, I guess. So that's what we're trying to do. Intervention, just a little bit.
Yeah.
So just a little bit more on Eid, just because I think it's important because it is kind of multi-layered. Yeah. So we talked about, brave, courageous festival who fought in the Battle of Karbala. So it was an uneven battle. The Umayyad army of Yazid I slaughtered all of Hussein's able male companions, while Hussein, according to Shia tradition, was the last to be killed. So I had to watch this massacre and feel each death, then die. The Umayyads looted Hussein's camp, decapitated the bodies of his companions, and took as prisoners all the women and children. And amongst them was Hussein's surviving son Ali, who became the fourth Shia Imam Zain al-Abidin, which that's actually a name that you hear in history. According to some Shia traditions, this is the day when the decapitated heads of the key murderers in the Karbala massacre, namely Umar ibn Sayyad and Ubayd Allah ibn Ziyad, who were killed by Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, so 687, reached Imam Zain al-Abidin, so Hussein's son, in Medina, and brought a smile to his face. And finally, Eid Shuya is also commonly referred to, as I said at the beginning, as Eid Zara, which is the festival of the family of Fatima. And she was a daughter of the Prophet Muhammad and mother of Imam Hussein. Mm-hmm. And so in this way, the celebration of Eid is also a veneration of the day of her son's murderers who were caught, and is considered an occasion of great exaltation and happiness. Yeah. So I find that quite interesting, because there is, again, this kind of light, dark, in a metaphoric way of horrific massacre, of brave men, and then also overcoming and venerating of this. Anyway, so Eid this year was celebrated on the 26th of October, mid-October. Yeah. And then after that, the next main holiday, which follows quite closely, is Mawlid an-Nabi, which is the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad. Yeah. And so this year, this was on the 3rd of November, which is actually quite interesting because that's right around All Souls Day and All Saints Day. So it fell in this Christian religious moment, which, I don't know, just this idea of those few days being super spiritual.
Everyone's celebrating together.
Yeah, a vast majority of people.
It's really interesting because obviously there's been so much conflict between all of these religions, and actually in the end, at the core of it, it's a very similar sentiment.
Yeah. And actually, let me do a brief correction. So this year, the Shia celebrated the birthday of the Prophet on the 3rd. The Sunnis celebrated the birthday of the Prophet on the 29th of October. Mm-hmm. So different birthdays. Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that. I apologize that I did not make that clear in the beginning.
It'd be interesting to see, because obviously this year's been so hard in a lot of respects. So it'll be interesting to see whether these celebrations are even more accentuated next year, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if it's super celebrations.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for super celebrations.
I think we need a bit of fun.
This year, didn't Chinese New Year just kind of slip past? Didn't that happen?
I think it did.
Yeah, that was on the 25th of January. So it was kind of when things had already started to turn a bit. Yeah. I feel. So hopefully Chinese New Year 2021, which will be the 12th of February, because that, again, is a lunar calendar. Hopefully by that point, it's not so much a shit show and it can actually be nice celebration.
I hope so. I hope, I feel like everyone's got such expectations for this coming year. I hope they doesn't fall short,
I mean, it's going to be a nightmare for at least another 6 months, I think. But I'm just hoping that as, more of the vulnerable receive their vaccines, that like the limitations of things can kind of slowly lessen. So like right now, Manchester's in extreme tier 3. So you can get like takeaway cocktails between certain hours, but you can't go to a pub. Restaurants are only takeaway.
Yeah.
You know, so there's still like a lot of cafes that aren't open and things, but it's like, oh, if we could just go to like casual tier 3, where it's like you could go to a pub and have a drink or something, you know, and then after that it's like tier 2, you can do this.
I mean, London, yeah, I think London is going to tier 3. To be fair, it's not really, I feel like it should have never gone out of tier 3 because honestly the streets are heaving with people.
I thought London was never in tier 3. I thought it was always tier 2. Was it in tier 3 for a while?
Oh, actually, possibly, yeah, when...
Because it's the capital, so it gets like a special...
Well, I mean, during lockdown, but like there are rumors going around that it should go into tier 3 next week, so...
Yeah, I did see that on The Guardian, which is only fair.
It's only fair, like it's necessary. I went last week and I went to Covent Garden and it was heaving with people. Yeah. And whilst still outside, it's still just not that really that safe, you know?
Yeah, and Manchester has been like a shit show always, but also it's politically because Manchester is a much more liberal city. And so it's like crack down, just like politics in America with the virus and all that kind of stuff. Healthcare should not be political, people.
No, I agree.
Sense and like human decency, but
well, yeah, I think a lot of this, like, this is not a situation where there's a win-win in any way, but like that's why it should just not even really cross your mind that there's any way that this won't be horrible. You know, there's some way in which it will be bad, so let's make it less terrible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, people are just selfish ignoramuses too. I was reading a Twitter thread the other day where this woman was one of the very first to get the vaccines because she's like a hospital administrator or something like that. Mm-hmm. So she like tweeted the image of her vaccination card because, you know, these vaccines are going to come in rounds of 2, just like a meningitis shot where you get one then 6 months later. Yeah. And people were like, oh, good for you. I'm not going to get it because I'm concerned about my fertility.
Oh my God, did you see that thread? That's such a stupid thread.
And people just being like, oh yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to get the vaccine because of this. And someone tweeted something that fucking cracked me up. They were like, just make everyone have to vape the vaccine, then they won't be concerned about what's inside it. And I laughed because it sounds ridiculous.
But it's true.
It's so true. People are so fucking bonkers about like the things that upset them and what they will and will not eat or will and will not put in their bodies.
I'm sorry, but like that's such bullshit. Like you don't know what it does to your fertility, but realistically, you won't know what like drinking tons of Diet Coke does to your fertility or like to your cancer levels or to that kind of thing. Yeah. No one studies that. And yet
or cell phones or microwaves or
Bluetooth or Wi-Fi
in your food. If you're vegetarian and you eat corn, all the soya-based crap, which I eat because I think it tastes good. But yeah, like who the fuck knows what's in that? Yeah. And it's like, just take the goddamn vaccine.
Yeah, don't
because
be a dick.
You'll be... It's not about you. That's the thing. This pandemic is not about
you.
It's about
stupid thing.
Others.
Yes, I agree.
It can be a bit more about you. You know, if you're a vulnerable person, totally get that.
If you have like something that, you know, you're at risk if you take a vaccine because it might send your body into complete shutdown or into a situation, that's a different story. And equally, you're vulnerable. Therefore, like, we have to accommodate you. But like, if you're a healthy 20-something-year-old, just take the fucking vaccine. Like,
and you have no and you have no allergy history. I also get the people who are concerned about allergy responses, but those are extreme cases. Yet again, I read something. Also, there was like, you know, in this thread, there were like scientists and people responding, and they were like, "You do realize that you have a higher chance of getting struck by lightning, or dying in a horrific plane crash, or like getting hit by a coconut." Than having any sort of adverse reaction to this vaccine. It was like something like or it was like 600,000 to 1, or, you know, and it was like the odds of this stuff that you're like literally terrified of happening
are so slim.
Is much more likely to happen than anything bad with the vaccine.
I agree. It's just so stupid.
Yeah.
I find this really outrageous. I think that I don't know if all generations have been this way, or whether this is just a symptom of our time, but I find this particularly outrageous.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's definitely exaggerated by our time, but I
Yeah.
do think it's kind of been around. I mean, and also someone else, one other tweet that I saw on this thread that cracked me up was this person was like, why do you think you've never gotten polio? Like, it's just these things that you take fucking for granted, you know, and you're like, it's because of a vaccine.
Yeah.
It's because of a shot that you take.
Well, but also, like, my father apparently, so, you know, this is unrelated, but my father watched on the Italian news, because in Italy, like, now vaccines are seen as bad things. Not because of COVID, but before that, parents were starting to be like, oh, but like vaccine disbelievers and stuff. And like, there's a whole report on like how family members are like, yeah, no, we're not going to give our children this vaccine and that. And then doctors being like, why do you think that you didn't get meningitis?
Exactly.
Why do you think you didn't get, like, why do you think you haven't died of this? Why do you want to put your kid at risk and then everyone else at risk?
Yeah, it's this like, weird, like, complacency, reverse psychology or something where it's like, yeah, no fucking wonder you're not concerned about measles or polio or meningitis. Like, it doesn't seem like a problem. It's because everyone fucking vaccinates themselves so that it's not a problem.
Yeah, it's so stupid. Human beings are so stupid. I just don't really understand. I'm sorry, this is not being much banter than I intended it, but like, this has been on my mind. I've like also ended up on someone's social media, and they're like supposedly an influencer, and like they went on about how they were worried about the fertility, and so they did the whole Instagram stories about this, and like then like tons of people commenting being like, how can you do this? Like, this is clearly propagating disinformation.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? And then they were like, oh, no, but you know, oh, it's my right, blah, blah, blah. I was like, shut up. Like, why?
Yeah, the conflation between people's like individual rights and then just being a selfish asshole. I think those are getting really confused lately.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, okay, yes, you have a right to get the vaccine or not, but you also have to consider that you are a member of society. Yeah. And that it is a right to be able to like socialize in a certain spectrum. Like, part of the thread I was looking at had a separate thread that started going on where someone was like, well, if you don't get a vaccine, you should all have to like live somewhere else or be somewhere else, or like separation, like smokers versus non-smoker sections, because I'm going to get this vaccine because I want to protect myself and others. And then people were like, well, that's not fair. And it's like, I don't want to be around you because you're being a fucking dick and putting me at risk.
Yeah.
Because you are like being
and I think it's kind of different to like, you know, the vaccine that women, that our generation at least, it was introduced when I was 12, you know, the vaccine viruses that you can get internally as a woman that can cause cancer. There's some vaccines where like it's your own choice, you know, whether you do that and then you get cancer, then that's like tough luck, you didn't do that. But like something that can spread so far is so stupid not to do.
And I think that people from the Middle Ages would love the vaccine, this like magical syringe that makes you feel better and makes other people be healthy. Also, like when we talked about the Black Plague, you know, they did what they needed to do to survive and keep the community alive. So they burned those herbs or, you know, cleaned the things. They did as much as they thought with the knowledge that they had. And so if medieval people can do it, so can you.
Yeah, just suck it up. Anyway.
Yeah, so 'tis the season to be jolly, folks.
And see you in the new year, I guess.
Yeah, so this is our last episode, official episode, until the new year. So today is December 13th, so we'll be releasing this on Monday, December 14th, and we're planning on taking a break until January, the week of like January 9th, 10th, that weekend, so releasing on January 11th. We do have a few little ideas of maybe a, you know, tidbit episode here and there, of maybe like a poetry reading or, you know, like a cooking session sort of fun thing, but it's not like officially in our calendar. So if they drop, wahoo. If they don't, you just have to wait until 2021. Yeah, that's about a month off but that just seems fair with the holidays. Ella's traveling back, you know.
Yeah, and we've been doing a lot of these.
You know, we've had quite a few. Gives us a chance also to recalibrate and, you know, think of some more fun ideas of conversations.
We wish you a merry holiday season, whether you celebrate or not. We wish you health. We wish you happiness and comfort, and send you lots of medieval kisses.
Yeah, health, wealth, and good fortune. And hopefully the dumpster fire of 2020 eases in the next few weeks as the year comes to a close, and that your new year starts off well, like better. I mean, it's not going to be a magical Cinderella, you know, stroke of midnight, but hopefully, the light at the end of the tunnel continues to get brighter and closer. And so like Ella said, we're sending, you know, all our love. Yeah.
So if you've enjoyed this episode, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Audible, or Amazon actually, by typing Modern Medieval Podcast. You can find us on social media. For example, you can find us on Facebook by typing Modern Medieval Podcast. We've got a page and a group. You can find us on Instagram by typing podcast.modern.medieval. You can find us on YouTube, just type Modern Medieval Podcast. We have an email if you have queries or remarks or anything you'd like to talk about. Just type modern.medieval.podcast@gmail.com. And finally, we have Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter, you can find us at medieval_modern. Please tweet at us or link us, at us, whatever it is that you do on Twitter. Tweet at us, tweet. Once again, just thanks for listening. It's always a pleasure to see that we get new listeners.
Yeah, and lots of love.
Yes, love, cheer.
Until next time, I'm Ella.
And I'm Megan. And this is Modern Medieval, the podcast.